I've been drawing caricatures for over 15 years. And one thing I hear a lot of people say is, I wish I could draw. I can only draw stick figures. I tell those people that there's someone out there who only draws stick figures, and they draw them of people's families. And then those families put them on the backs of their cars. I bet the person only drawing stick figures is doing just fine. In fact, Spencer Hill, owner of the company FamilySticker.com, told me that they've sold over $10 million worth of family stickers. My point isn't about art or artistic ability. My point is that so many of us have false assumptions about what is and is not creative, or about what we can and cannot do, that we limit our potential. Everyone is creative, but not everyone knows it. I've got a magician friend who showed me this trick where he made a feather levitate between his hands. It appeared like there was nothing there to support or hold up the feather. I asked him, "How the heck did you do that?" Then he showed me a very thin piece of string that was connected to both his hands where the feather rested. Before he showed it to me, it was invisible. But once I knew it was there, I could actually see the string, and I understood how the trick worked. Then I thought, this is a great analogy for creativity. People who don't understand creativity often think that it's magic, or that only a few of us have it, and everyone else is just doomed to be uncreative. However, when people begin to see what creativity is and understand how it works, they realize that it's not magic, but something we all have, and we're all capable of. Having a deeper understanding of creativity will dispel some of these false assumptions and help us to reach our full potential. What would you think of if I asked you to imagine what creativity looks like? You might picture an artist putting the final strokes on a painting. You might envision an eccentric scientist working in a laboratory. You might hear the sounds of children playing as they reenact characters from their favorite cartoons. Or maybe you feel a sense of pride about a successful parenting technique you recently discovered. These are all correct. These are all examples of what creativity looks like. The problem comes when we break down these acts of creativity and try to identify the actions involved in the process. We often struggle with defining or intentionally teaching and promoting creativity. The field of creativity has a language, just like any other field. And when we understand this language, we begin to see how it is that everyone is creative. We'll be able to promote creativity in ourselves, our children, our students, and our employees. And as a result, we'll be more open to new ideas and experiences. We'll be more comfortable with ambiguity and willing to take risks. We'll become better problem solvers and discover higher job satisfaction. And most importantly, we'll live happier and healthier lives. The best way to become more creative is to learn about creativity. What if I asked you to define creativity? How would you define it? I'd be willing to bet that I would get as many different answers as there are people in the audience. I'd even bet that some people might include the phrase, thinking outside the box. You just need to think outside the box to be more creative, right? But what does that phrase mean, and where did it come from? In the 1970s, management consultants started using something called the 9-dot problem to demonstrate creative thinking. The goal of the 9-dot problem was to connect all 9 dots using 4 straight lines without lifting your pencil. Again, the goal was to connect all 9 dots using 4 straight lines without lifting your pencil. It's pretty tough. I had to look the answer up myself. I was like most people, and I assumed that I had to stay within the confines of the 9 dots. But you just can't do it. Here's a few examples of my failed attempts. In order to succeed, you have to challenge that assumption and think outside the box. Challenging assumptions is important to understand for creativity because assumptions keep us from trying new methods or ideas, and they limit our potential. But still, creativity is so much more than just challenging assumptions or thinking outside of some box. I've got a few issues with this phrase. First, it's a cliche, and cliches are the antithesis to creativity. They're mindless answers to complex issues. Thinking outside the box doesn't help us to understand or intentionally teach creativity. It's not that simple. Maybe we need to combine boxes. Some might say that all creativity is the result of combining previous ideas. Combining ideas is great for creativity. Look at Gutenberg's printing press, where he combined the coin punch with the wine press. He combined ideas to create the printing press, which is still one of the most influential innovations in history. Maybe we're constrained to working within the box and we can't get out. Maybe we're limited to the box and we still need to be creative. Limitations are great for creativity. They take away our familiar behavior and they force us to try new methods of solving problems. Limitations often lead to everyday creativity, like finding a way around an unexpected detour or substituting a missing ingredient in a recipe. Anybody who's ever put a limitation on a teenager knows just how creative they can be. Creativity does have a dark side. And who says we're always in a box? Maybe we're in a triangle or a circle, a big red circle. What do you think might happen if I step outside this circle? You think TEDxAsheville will come snatch me off stage, or maybe they'll cut my mic off? I just don't know if I can do it. There's so much uncertainty. I don't know if I can take that risk. Creativity does involve uncertainty and risk. What do you all think? Should I try it?
Yes.
Get back in my circle. All right, so what is creativity? I still haven't defined it. Most researchers agree that in order for something to be creative, it must be new and useful, or novel and have application. I get pushback about that definition in workshops that I teach. People ask me why creativity has to be useful. Why does it have to have application? That doesn't sound like creativity. I'll tell you a story to illustrate this and some other creative concepts. In the 1950s, two engineers named Fielding and Chavanez got the wild and crazy idea to create 3D wallpaper by fusing together shower curtains. And they failed. Nobody wanted 3D wallpaper. They used divergent thinking to come up with other ways to use the product they created. And then they tried to rebrand it as greenhouse insulation. And that failed too. A few years later, when IBM was ready to send out their first shipment of computers, they needed some way to keep them safe during shipment. And somebody remembered that idea of 3D wallpaper. And it worked. And that is the history of bubble wrap. All right, let's break this down. First, you saw how the product was new, but it wasn't useful until much later. Nobody wanted 3D wallpaper or greenhouse insulation made from shower curtains. It wasn't until the product became bubble wrap that it became useful or had application, and therefore became creative. I mentioned that they used divergent thinking to come up with other ways to use their original product. Divergent thinking is the act of coming up with multiple solutions for one problem, or as they used it, coming up with multiple uses for one product. Unfortunately, we're taught in school that there's only one right answer to every problem, and this is wrong. Divergent thinking is imperative for creativity. I emphasize the fact that they failed. Failure is an unavoidable and crucial part of the creative process. Creativity involves generating something that's new, so of course people are going to fail at first. It's not always a bad thing. We should embrace it, celebrate it, learn from it, and keep trying. I've got 2 more terms that I want to share with you, and I believe these are the most important terms for promoting creativity. A few years ago, I started teaching caricatures to kids, and I soon realized that it wasn't caricatures I was teaching, but rather creativity. I began by giving them my only 2 rules: make a lot of mistakes and have compassion for yourself and others. I tell them, you're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not following the rules. Kids get it. They say that's because we learn from mistakes. When I do the same activity with adults, they appreciate having the permission and the space to make mistakes. I run around the room giving high fives to those who admit to making mistakes. You know they're going to happen, so make mistakes, and make mistakes the expectation. The second rule is to have compassion. I used to say have respect, but then I realized that respect is perceived. It's subjective. I may be disrespecting some of you right now, and I don't even know it. Coming from a place of compassion allows us to view the situation from the perspective of others and to give them and ourselves the space needed to be creative and to grow. I believe these 2 terms, mistakes and compassion, are the most important to understand for promoting creativity because they empower us to explore and embrace the creative process in a judgment-free environment. Creativity is a vital aspect of our lives. In order for us to reach our potential, we must understand it, and we must be able to talk about it. Having a deeper understanding of creativity will help us to allow ourselves to make mistakes. We'll have greater compassion for ourselves and others. We'll challenge assumptions, avoid cliches, and embrace and celebrate failures. We'll use divergent thinking, combine ideas, and accept limitations as opportunities. Now that you all have a deeper understanding, I challenge you to start looking at creativity differently. Imagine if someone said to you, "I'm stupid. I have no intelligence at all." Would you accept that? No, heck no. However, we often accept it when someone says, "I'm not creative. I don't have a creative bone in my body." This needs to stop. Everyone is creative, and now that you have a deeper understanding, you can explain to them how they are creative. And if they still don't believe you, and they insist that they don't have a creative bone in their body, you look them straight in the eye, and you tell them that humor is part of creativity, and everyone has a funny bone and a humorous bone. So at the very least, they have 2 creative bones in their bodies. Thank you.